Hello everyone, it's been a long time since I was able to film anything. As usual, I tend to keep my summers free of any postings on YouTube simply because I'm not home. Most of the time I'm right here as I usually am in the summer. What I do try to do in the summertime is maybe film some things I bring with me. So today I want to film hopefully at least 3 videos, and it's been quite challenging to film lately because of the heat. This heat wave we're going through is quite intense, and I remember a few years ago I used to just grab my tripod and my phone and would go up on a mountain, and in the heat, in the sun, I would be able to film. But now you just can't do that. You just can't do that. And last year I was able to film on the terrace where I am right now, but these days it was just impossible. Now, today I want to speak to you a bit about Après L'Ondée, with the occasion that I got myself a new bottle. I used to have, and I still do, I still own my B bottle of Après L'Ondée, so I don't know, I'm not familiar with any vintage formulation of Après L'Ondée. I'm just going to give you my impressions on the current Après L'Ondée. I found this online quite decently priced, so I couldn't say no, because Après L'Ondée is one of my most favorite scents ever, not just at Guerlain. It is beautiful, it's so refreshing. Oh God, so if anybody doesn't know what Après L'Ondée smells like, it's violet, as I would call it dewy violets. This was my very first impression. So a few years ago, when I smelled Après L'Ondée for the very first time, to my nose, this was just watery, fresh, dewy, crisp spring violets, because violets do bloom in spring. And it is amazing how my nose has changed over the years, because I no longer perceive it only as this watery, very faint, very delicate violet smell, although this continues to remain as such. I couldn't detect any major differences between the new bottle and the B bottle. So I'm sure there are some differences, but to my nose I couldn't detect any. Now I realize that Après L'Ondée is something that changes, just like Shalimar and just like Bleue, and they are very, very related, Après L'Ondée and Bleue. We will talk about this in just a few moments. It changes. I don't know what factors prompted to change on me, but there are days when I perceive it so wildly different. So right now it is very woody but quite fresh. It's on the bitter anise side, On other days on me, I perceive it as very creamy, very fluffy, but creamy to the point of being buttery, almost rancid-like. It's like dirty, musky orris butter, which is very, very interesting. There are also days when it's just, watery, crisp. I remember something Sylvaine Delacour said on her blog, that she compares Après L'Ondée to a painting, a watercolor painting, which is mostly pastels. I'm paraphrasing, I don't know what exactly what she said. And comparing Après L'Ondée to Bleue, she said that Bleue is something that's very vivid. It's full color. It's a full color painting, as opposed to Après L'Ondée being, baby blues and creams and pastels. Now, I should say that Après L'Ondée, when compared to Bleue, Après L'Ondée is like a cameo brooch which is very, you know, coquette and small and intimate. And this, of course, refers to the fragrance itself and its behavior, while L'Heure Bleue, which I do have with me, because it's the next video I will film. L'Heure Bleue is a wide mural, because as similar as they are, and L'Heure Bleue definitely stems from Après L'Ondée, as similar as they are so different in, you know, color palettes and physics and architecture and behavior, and it's amazing. This is how I would describe Après L'Ondée in terms of smell. It's this powdery, delicate, very watery blend of violets and iris with bitter elements of aniseed. Might be some artemisia in there. There's cassis, which is very interesting because that's also another bitter element. Cassis, which is the bud of the black currant bush. I find that whenever there's bitter elements in an otherwise fresh composition, it only serves to make it even fresher. I don't know, it just adds to the feeling of tonic, of freshness, of vegetal, I don't know. Bitter to me is something also quite elegant. They cite neroli, bergamot, violet, orris, mimosa, carnation, sandalwood, ylang, vetiver, rose, jasmine, iris, heliotrope, iris and orris at the same time, which is so silly. Vanilla, musk, benzoin, styrax and amber. And when you look at those notes, they're the exact same notes as L'Heure Bleue, which of course they are. I think they're the exact same thing. There is something to be said about the Carnation accord at Guerlain, because as we all know, Carnation isn't something that's, the flower itself cannot be distilled, so there isn't a Carnation oil out there. So Carnation has to be recomposed, and they say on the Guerlain website that each perfumer has their own Carnation accord. So Carnation can be envisioned by every perfumer differently, which is, you know, I guess it's true to some degree. But as far as I know, the smell of Carnation, or as far as I'm familiar with the Carnation at Guerlain, because at Guerlain you have Carnation in Après L'Ondée, you have Carnation in L'Heure Bleue, you've got Carnation in Shalimar, there's Carnation in Louis, and I'm sure there's Carnation in many other fragrances at Guerlain. But to me, these fragrances that I've cited right now is where the Carnation is more salient, most salient to my nose. So I recognize Carnation whenever there's this buttery, very woody clove slash eugenol, because that's where usually the clove smell comes from in fragrance, slightly rosy, quite powdery, and it doesn't come out at all times. Right now, there's only hints of this Carnation accord. I do feel it's quite woody, it's quite bitter, but the Carnation accord isn't here just yet. It comes to me mostly in the dry down, which isn't saying much because this fragrance, especially in the hot weather, it doesn't last very long. So the dry down comes on fairly quickly. It's just like Vol de Nuit, you know. There's a bit of Carnation in Vol de Nuit as well. It's just like Vol de Nuit. When it's very hot outside, the fragrance doesn't last long. It disintegrates. It lasts for maybe 2 hours. This is why I say that this fragrance shines in early spring or in cooler weather. Everybody smelled, I suppose, Carnation, but carnations aren't terribly fragrant, you know, as flowers go, but there is a hint of that smell in the carnation flower as well, but it's very poetic, it's very imaginary. So when every element is just right, you get the perfect carnation smell. It is a very gorgeous accord, but it's so elusive that whenever I get it on my skin, it's like a celebration moment, you know. Oh, there's the carnation. Finally, I love it so much. And in Shalimar, in the drier stages of Shalimar, but again, only when all the other elements are right, only when the planets align just correctly, is where the carnation appears, and it's such a beautiful, treasured moment. So Après L'Ondée has been around for quite some time. It's been released in 1906, imagine that, and it's been done by Jacques Guerlain. I can only imagine what it was like creating this fragrance, and you know, I say the word stumbling upon this fragrance, but of course that's not a good term, because this fragrance was very worked. But having this fragrance, it became a pillar fragrance, one of the pillar fragrances at House Guerlain, that so many other fragrances just sort of derived directly from 1906's Après L'Ondée. And there are so many fragrances, I have some notes here because I don't want to forget anything. Directly from Après L'Ondée, you've got Bleue, because of that combination of iris, or should I say violet, orris, and heliotrope, because that's the magic of Après L'Ondée and the magic of Bleue as well. You have blue flowers, sweet, fresh, but melancholy, adding powderiness and the generosity of the heliotrope, which is just amazing. That combination always gets me. And then you have, I should say, Insolence as well, because Insolence is a modern scent at Guerlain. It's from the 2000s, but still, I think there are very clear influences, and I think this is what makes Insolence such a characteristic fragrance at Guerlain. The references were very well chosen by Maurice Rossel. Then you've got, of course, Iris Ganache, and Iris Ganache is on my list because not every iris at Guerlain stems directly from Après L'Ondée, because you've got many other iris fragrances. Not all of them stem directly from Après L'Ondée, but Iris Ganache, I think, stems from Après L'Ondée because of the way that iris is done. It's violet iris that is so fresh and so watery and so delicate, it is perfection. Then you've got Cologne de Soixanty, and again, Cologne de Soixanty is something I mentioned many times. It's one of my most favorite scents. I mentioned it again because of the woody freshness of that iris, which is just so good. And then the most recent one, I think, is Flora Salvagia, now an Aqua Allegoria that stems directly from a very watery fragrance as Après L'Ondée is, which is, again, it's amazing. And Flora Salvagia is all about woody wildflowers, musky wildflowers. Such a surprising combination in Flora Salvagia. But anyway, this, I think, is what makes Après L'Ondée so special. It's a fragrance from such a long time ago, and I'm sure it's changed. I'm sure what we get now, oh, this is very soapy right now. So it's soapy violets. So in the early stages of Bleue, you can get a stage that's very similar to what I get from Après L'Ondée right now, which is soapy neroli, violets. This is so good. Now, this doesn't have a very long trajectory, as I said. It doesn't have a very long evolution. It mostly depends on the temperature, that's for sure. I think it continues to be a very well done scent. I wish it lasted longer, but it still continues to be an influence, which is so good, and an influence not only at Guerlain. I think it continues to influence other scents in the fragrance world as well, because I think Hiram Green's Vivacious, which is a very beautiful fragrance that's not unlike Après L'Ondée, it's quite close in composition. I think it lasts a bit longer, but it does sacrifice a bit of the freshness that is Après L'Ondée. I didn't mention the name. Après L'Ondée means after, not the storm, but after a quick summer shower, you know, a quick rain, which is so beautiful and fitting, because I am expecting one of those, you know, every minute now, because there has been some thunder earlier, and I think there's, well, maybe not a shower, but quite the storm coming, which will be so well received. So yeah, I think it continues to influence fragrances. Chanel's latest launch, Comet, I think is quite inspired from Après L'Ondée as well. Maybe a bit more aldehydic than this one, maybe a bit more woody, and it's interesting how the floral aspects in Comet have been turned more towards a cherry blossom or cherry tree, the bitter aspects, you know, the bitter woody aspect, but they are very, very similar, Après L'Ondée to Comet. We will see you next in my video regarding Bleue. And until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.